President Reagan said, in the present crisis, government is not the solution to our problems, government is the problem. The crisis that existed when Reagan took office was very similar to the one we face today. Large numbers of people unemployed, and even more dropping out of the workforce, a stagnant economy, a growing federal government. We solved these problems then by coming together and by implementing the right ideas. We can do it again, but we must look beyond the current debate in Washington.
There is no doubt Rand Paul has become something of a media darling on both sides of the political coin. One side that seeks to build him up as the true counter-candidate for those seeking someone new and fresh to run the country. The other side that views him as little more than another opportunist who will say and do anything to get that Pennsylvania Avenue address. Let us seek the truth. Welcome back to MidPoint, former senior advisor to the U.S. State Department, now principal at the global advisory firm DC International Advisory, also author of Smart Power, Between Diplomacy and War. Christian Whiton joins us. Chris, thanks so much for being here again today.
Great to be here. Thanks, Ed.
So let's talk about Rand Paul here. In the Washington Post right now, it's all talking about the flip-flop charge that is Rand Paul at this point. Widely panned, flip-flopping on Israel, denied changing his mind on the Civil Rights Act. Is he a flip-flopper or just somebody who's learning as he goes along?
Well, unfortunately, by the time you reach the U.S. Senate, have spent 4 years there, are a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, you shouldn't really be learning on the job. It's one thing to evolve a little bit in light of recent events, but to completely change your philosophy and look at ISIS, the Islamic State. Rand Paul basically blamed the United States for the creation of this. He said that the pittance of arms that we eventually sent to Syria after, some 3 years of war, now we're approaching 4 years of war, 190,000 dead. But despite basically having done nothing in Syria, supposedly the creation of the Islamic State, the march of ISIS, is somehow our fault. And yet now, just in the last couple of days, as public sentiment has turned with some alarm to what ISIS is doing, the beheadings, the takeover of big parts of Iraq, the potential of making war right here on the United States, Rand Paul says he now wants to destroy them. And so you have this problem with libertarians. They sort of have this philosophy that sounds nice, but when you get into the details, it's politically unpalatable. If they're honest, they say they want to get rid of Social Security and Medicare, but maybe they hedge. And the same is true in foreign policy. They hedge so much, it seems a lot like flip-flopping.
What you have just said, and you probably said it right there, the problem with libertarians, many people would take exactly what you said, and they would say that in essence, that means they are nothing more than wafflers and panderers in many ways to exactly what people want them to be. And being a chameleon in politics is not always a good idea. Fair to say?
I think that's right. At some point you have to have credibility. People do change positions over time, and even some people who've been elected president. But to come do so, and to always do so immediately when public opinion shifts, and we're going to see this on Russia too. Incidentally, Rand Paul blamed the United States for Russia. He said we shouldn't tweak Russia, as if tweaking Russia is the reason Putin invaded the nation of Georgia and then Ukraine taking Crimea. In fact, Russia has an age-old quest to dominate Europe, and Putin has significant political ambitions. But these things happen. You see an evolution sort of playing to where the field is. So I think it's a real problem. But having said that, unfortunately, in my mind, Rand Paul still has a very strong following, still has net positives in approval rating, and I think will do pretty well in states like New Hampshire and Iowa if he runs for the GOP presidential nomination.
Is it possible that he still has that sort of support simply because, as many people would surmise, there is no other real strong candidate on the right at the moment? And until that happens, Rand Paul is going to continue to be the darling.
I think he'll be a darling for many. I was talking to a former senator last week who has great experience with presidential campaigns, who thought it would come down to Rand Paul versus someone else in the GOP primary. Of course, it's impossible to game this out 2 years in advance, but nonetheless, Rand Paul has a very strong following, and one of the problems in the administration in which I serve is that it's hard at present to define a conservative foreign policy. I think it's possible. I think you should follow Ronald Reagan's lead of being very cheap and stingy with American lives and with American servicemen lives, but nonetheless forceful in the world, use the whole range of statecraft. But no one's really articulated that. I think they may. And in the meantime, you have a lot of people who are just very wary of the world supporting Rand Paul, also people who grossly overestimate or who just accept at face value overestimates of the cost of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. There was a significant human charge and cost, and nothing can bring that back. But, those two wars in the decade after 9/11 cost $1.2, $1.3 trillion in a decade where we spent $30 trillion. But most people don't keep that in perspective.
Christian, what about those people who would say he's just being a smart politician? Because obviously mores change, ideas change, thoughts change, and we all have to simply evolve. I know you used the word evolution in there a couple of times, but what about those who say it's just smart politics? As long as you ride the waves, stay at the top, you can get elected.
I think that's fine if your life's ambition is just to remain a senator forever, or if you are a Bill Clinton type person catching a certain wave in the Democratic Party at the right time. But for Republicans who do put a priority on someone having a consistent track record, Republicans often turn in their nomination just to the guy who was runner-up last time. There is no real runner-up in this race, but they were going to look for someone with longevity, with a long track record, with a consistent track record, preferably a governor. And so I don't think that works for Rand Paul if he intends to graduate from senator. And of course, every indication is he wants to do that.
You mentioned ISIS earlier, and I wanted to get your take on this as well, because he believes that the United States should now go after ISIS very aggressively, which is in direct contrast to his father, who on Sunday wrote that the United States should at all costs avoid intervening in Syria. Is that smart strategically to do, to break yourself with your dad when your dad still has so much popularity in the country?
Well, I think, that's a real question. We'll have to find out. But I think he's probably safe, because where else are libertarians going to go at this point? He really is the only person. Libertarians aren't going to gravitate toward Hillary Clinton or Elizabeth Warren at this point, although I think many ultimately will vote Democratic. It seems to me libertarians talk about cutting the size of government, but they're more interested in isolationism and legalized drugs than they are in actually pruning the size and reach of the regulatory state. But in the meantime, you have this large body of volunteers who went to bat for Ron Paul in his presidential election show up in important places like Iowa, where really you do need a lot of ground forces spread around the state. And I think Rand Paul will continue to draw on that. Somewhat unfortunately, I think he actually has a pretty good political beachhead.
You still get the feeling that someplace everybody is looking for someone else right now. They're still just looking for the next best thing before we get there. It's a long way to go. By the way, the book again is Smart Power: Between Diplomacy and War, and the author is our guest, Christian Whiton. Christian, thank you so much for joining us again, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Ed. Great to be here.
All right, next hour on MidPoint, live from the Ukraine as NATO seeks to come up with reasonable and doable solutions to the recent Russian invasion. That and so much more when MidPoint continues.